The first sound I heard wasn't the alarm. It was steel scraping across hardwood. I froze halfway down the staircase, my heart pounding as voices echoed through my living room. "Move it. The safe's heavier than it looks." Another voice answered with a laugh. "Karen said everything inside belongs to the HOA now." For a split second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I rounded the corner. 6 people wearing bright yellow safety vests stood inside my house. Inside. Not on my porch. Not in my driveway. Inside my living room. My front door hung crooked from its frame, splintered around the deadbolt as if someone had rammed it with a battering tool. 2 men wrestled a 700-pound fireproof safe onto a heavy-duty furniture dolly, while another recorded everything with a cell phone. Standing in the center of my living room was Linda Prescott, the impeccably dressed president of the Maple Ridge Estates HOA. She wore a cream-colored business suit that looked more appropriate for a board meeting than a home invasion. Her silver clipboard rested against one arm as though this were just another routine inspection. She glanced at me with the faintest smile. "Oh," she said calmly, "you're home." I stared at her, unable to process what I was seeing. "You broke into my house," she sighed dramatically. "No, Mr. Carter. We executed a lawful property seizure under HOA authority." My pulse hammered against my temples. "There is no HOA authority that allows you to kick in someone's front door." She didn't even blink. "You've ignored repeated notices." "I've never received a single legitimate notice." "Our attorneys disagree." One of the workers grunted as the safe rolled across the hardwood floor, leaving deep gouges in the oak my father and I had installed years earlier. "Careful!" another worker yelled. "It'll fit through the doorway." I stepped directly in front of them. "Put that safe down." The room went silent. Linda folded her arms. "If you interfere with an official HOA enforcement action, I'll have you arrested." I almost laughed. Arrested? Inside my own house? Before I could answer, 2 county deputies walked through my destroyed front door. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone with authority. One deputy looked at the broken lock, the damaged frame, and the safe halfway out my front entrance. "What exactly is happening here?" Linda immediately handed him a thick folder. "We're enforcing a civil judgment. He's obstructing." The deputy flipped through the paperwork without saying a word. Then he looked directly at me. "Sir." For one terrifying second, I honestly thought he was about to handcuff me. Instead, he quietly asked, "Do you have any identification?" I reached into my jacket pocket. Linda smirked. "This should be interesting." I slowly removed a black leather credential wallet and held it toward the deputy. The moment he opened it, every trace of color drained from his face. His eyes shot from the badge to me, then back to Linda Prescott. The room fell so silent I could hear the wheels of my safe stop rolling. The deputy swallowed hard. "Oh, my God." He looked straight at the HOA president. "Ma'am, do you have any idea whose house you just broke into?" 3 weeks earlier, my biggest concern had been whether the maple tree in my backyard would survive another unusually dry summer. I had no idea my own living room would soon become the center of a criminal investigation. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 39 years old, and for the past 8 years I've served as the director of the State Anti-Corruption Unit, a specialized law enforcement division that investigates public corruption, bribery, fraud, and abuse of government authority. My job has never been glamorous. Most days were spent buried under financial records, interviewing reluctant witnesses, or assembling cases that took years to bring before a judge. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my career investigating people who believed power placed them above the law. I never imagined I'd come home one day and find the exact same mentality running my neighborhood. Despite the nature of my work, I valued privacy more than anything. Very few people outside my office knew what I actually did. To my neighbors, I was simply the quiet guy who left early, came home late, kept his lawn neat, and spent weekends restoring classic woodworking projects in the detached garage my late father and I had built together. This house wasn't just real estate, it was home. My parents bought it nearly 40 years earlier, long before upscale developments surrounded the area. Every room carried memories. The pencil marks measuring my height were still hidden inside the pantry door. The stone fireplace had been laid by my grandfather. The oak flooring, now scarred by strangers dragging my safe across it, had taken my father and me 2 entire summers to install by hand. When my parents passed away within 18 months of each other, Selling the property never crossed my mind. Some things couldn't be replaced. Over the years, however, everything around me changed. The old farmland behind my property disappeared beneath rows of expensive executive homes. A private clubhouse appeared. Then, tennis courts, walking trails, decorative fountains. Finally came the Maple Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Every mailbox in the new subdivision displayed the HOA logo. Mine never did. That wasn't an accident. My property sat on an older parcel that had never been annexed into the subdivision. My deed predated the entire development by decades, and every county record clearly reflected that fact. I wasn't a member, never had been, and had never signed a single HOA covenant. At first, the board ignored me. Then came the friendly invitations. We'd love to have you join the community. I politely declined. A month later, the invitations became letters, then invoices, then violation notices accusing me of failing to maintain community standards. They cited regulations about mailbox color, holiday decorations, fence height, even parking my own pickup truck in my own driveway. Each notice ended the same way. Failure to comply may result in enforcement action. I laughed the first few times. Surely someone had made a clerical mistake. I mailed copies of my deed, my survey, and a brief letter explaining that my property was not subject to the HOA. Weeks later, another envelope arrived. This one wasn't a mistake. Across the top, in bold red letters, it read, "Final Notice of Non-Compliance." Attached was a bill demanding nearly $18,700 in unpaid HOA assessments, penalties, legal fees, and interest. At the bottom was a handwritten signature, Linda Prescott. I remember staring at that page in my kitchen, feeling something I almost never experienced during investigations. Not anger, unease. Because people don't usually double down after you've proven they're wrong, unless they believe they're protected by something or someone far more powerful than the truth. The next morning, I drove straight to the Maple Ridge Estates clubhouse with the folder containing my deed, the original subdivision plat, certified county records, and every letter the HOA had mailed me over the previous 6 months. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for a conversation. The clubhouse looked more like a luxury resort than a neighborhood office. Stone columns framed the entrance, and perfectly trimmed hedges surrounded a circular fountain where residents sat drinking coffee as though nothing in the world could possibly disturb their morning. Inside, the receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Linda Prescott." She glanced at her screen. "She's expecting you." That answer immediately caught my attention. Expecting me? I hadn't called. The receptionist pointed toward a large conference room. Linda sat at the head of a polished mahogany table. Around her were 4 board members, each with neatly organized binders and matching coffee mugs bearing the HOA logo. It didn't look like an informal meeting. It looked like a hearing. Linda folded her hands as I walked in. "Mr. Carter, please, have a seat." "I'd rather stand." "As you wish." I placed my folder on the table and slid the deed toward her. "My property isn't part of Maple Ridge Estates. You've been billing the wrong person." Without even opening the folder, she pushed it back toward me. "We've already reviewed your documents." "Then you know you're mistaken." "No," she replied calmly. "We know you're refusing to accept reality." One of the board members leaned forward. "Our legal committee determined your parcel functions as part of the neighborhood." I frowned. "Functions as?" Linda nodded. "You use the same entrance. Your property benefits from surrounding home values. You enjoy roads maintained by the community." "I use a county road. It's connected to ours." "That's not how property law works." She smiled, almost sympathetically. "You'd be surprised how flexible the law can be." That sentence stayed with me. People who understand the law rarely describe it as flexible. People who abuse it often do. I took a slow breath. "Let's make this simple. Show me the covenant with my signature." Silence. "Show me the recorded amendment annexing my land." More silence. Finally, Linda stood. "We're done discussing technicalities. Those technicalities determine ownership." She walked around the table until we were only a few feet apart. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, "every homeowner eventually realizes cooperation is easier than resistance. I'm not one of your homeowners. You will be." The confidence in her voice wasn't theatrical. She believed it. As I turned to leave, she spoke again. "If the balance isn't paid within 14 days, The board will authorize stronger enforcement measures. I looked over my shoulder. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure escalated. Violation notices appeared taped to my front door, despite my security gate remaining locked. Someone placed bright orange stickers marked "Property Non-Compliant" on my mailbox. Landscapers hired by the HOA repeatedly crossed onto my yard, claiming they were maintaining common areas. When I asked them to leave, they insisted they had written authorization from the board. Then my next-door neighbor, Tom Henderson, knocked on my door one evening. He looked nervous. "Dan, I probably shouldn't be telling you this." "Telling me what?" He glanced over both shoulders before lowering his voice. "I was at the clubhouse yesterday. Linda told everyone you've been accused of hiding financial records, that state investigators are looking into you, and that your house may be seized." I stared at him. "She said that?" He nodded. People believed her. That wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was defamation. Someone was building a false narrative around me, and if they were willing to spread lies that easily, I had a feeling this fight reached far beyond an overbearing homeowners association. That night, I stopped treating the situation like an irritating neighborhood dispute. I started treating it like a criminal investigation. Old habits die hard. Instead of reacting emotionally, I opened a legal pad, drew a timeline, and wrote every interaction I'd had with the HOA over the past 6 months. Dates, letters, witnesses, phone calls, security camera timestamps. The more I filled in the page, the more one detail stood out. Nothing the HOA had done was random. Every step had been carefully planned. The following morning, I called the one person I trusted outside my own agency to give me an objective opinion. Margaret Ellis. Margaret was 62, a respected real estate attorney with nearly 4 decades of experience litigating complex property disputes across the state. We'd met years earlier during a public corruption case involving fraudulent land transfers, and since then she'd become both a trusted legal advisor and a close friend. She listened without interrupting as I laid every document across the conference table in her office. When I finished, she adjusted her glasses and quietly asked, "Daniel, have you checked the county recorder's office recently? I already have my deed." "I'm not talking about your deed." She slid one of the HOA notices toward me. "I'm talking about what someone may have filed against it." That possibility hadn't crossed my mind. Within an hour, we were sitting inside the county records office, requesting every document ever recorded against my parcel. The clerk disappeared into the back room. When she returned, she placed a thick stack of certified records on the counter. Margaret began flipping through them. Everything looked normal. Original deed, property tax history, survey maps, utility easements. Then she stopped. Her eyebrows narrowed. "That's interesting." "What?" She handed me a single recorded document, dated just 8 months earlier. Across the top it read, "Notice of HOA Annexation." I stared at it. "What is this?" "It claims your property voluntarily joined Maple Ridge Estates." "That's impossible." "I know." The document included a signature supposedly belonging to me. It wasn't even close. The handwriting looked awkward, the initials were wrong, and the notary acknowledgement listed a county I'd never even visited. Margaret looked up. "This isn't a clerical error. It's forged." "I believe so." My stomach tightened. Forging recorded land documents wasn't just unethical, it was a felony. But something bothered me even more. This couldn't have been accepted without supporting paperwork. Exactly. We requested the entire recording packet. 20 minutes later, another folder arrived. Inside were additional documents supposedly proving my consent. A membership agreement, a boundary acknowledgement, a waiver of objections. Every single signature was fake. Even worse, each page had been notarized by the same individual. Margaret leaned back slowly. "Daniel, if these documents were knowingly filed, we're looking at conspiracy, fraud, forgery, and potentially multiple participants." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Tom Henderson. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Dan, I think you need to come home." "What happened?" "I saw 2 trucks from the HOA pull into your driveway. They're measuring your front entrance." I stood up instantly. "For what?" Tom hesitated. Then he said the words that sent a chill down my spine. I heard one of them tell the other, "Make sure the safe will fit through the door." I was already halfway to my truck before Tom finished the sentence. Margaret caught up with me in the parking lot, her briefcase still open in one hand. "Daniel, don't confront them alone." "I'm not planning to." She looked me straight in the eye. "You are now sitting on evidence of multiple felonies. If they're bold enough to forge recorded documents, they may be desperate enough to destroy evidence. That thought hit harder than I wanted to admit. My safe. It wasn't filled with cash or family jewelry like the HOA probably imagined. It contained encrypted case files, chain of custody records, legally protected investigative materials, and backup evidence from several ongoing public corruption investigations. Everything inside was secured according to state protocol, but the mere fact that someone was attempting to seize it without lawful authority transformed this from a property dispute into something far more serious. I immediately called my deputy director. "Eric, I need a favor." He could tell from my voice this wasn't routine. "What's going on?" "I'll explain later. Right now I need every access log related to Maple Ridge Estates." There was a pause. "That's oddly specific. Trust me. I'll call you back." Margaret and I drove directly to my house. The HOA trucks were gone, but fresh chalk marks had been drawn around my front doorway and porch columns. Bright orange paint marked measurements across the driveway. Someone had even photographed the side gate. I crouched near one of the markings. "They're planning something." Margaret nodded grimly. "They're planning logistics." Less than an hour later, Eric called back. His tone was completely different. "Daniel, where are you?" "Home. I searched our public records database like you asked. And? You won't believe this. I've had that feeling a lot today. There are 6 separate complaints filed by the Maple Ridge HOA over the last year." I frowned. "I've never heard about them." "You weren't supposed to." "What does that mean?" "They were all closed before assignment." That stopped me cold. Every complaint had alleged something different. Illegal firearms, environmental violations, financial crimes, even accusations that I was operating an unlicensed business from my garage. Each one had been anonymous. Each one had been determined to be baseless. Each one had mysteriously disappeared before reaching an investigator. "Who filed them?" I asked. The reporting contact listed the same phone number every time. He read it aloud. I recognized it instantly. It was the direct office number for the Maple Ridge Estates HOA. Someone wasn't merely harassing me. They were weaponizing government complaint systems in an attempt to build a false record against me. Margaret slowly shook her head. "This pattern establishes intent." Before I could respond, another email notification appeared on my phone. It came from the county recorder's office. Our request for archived submission records had been processed. Attached was a scanned copy of the original annexation filing package. At the bottom of the transmittal sheet was something neither of us expected: a courier receipt. It identified the person who had physically delivered the forged documents to the county for recording: Linda Prescott. More importantly, the security log included the exact time she entered the building. Margaret immediately compared it with the notary certificate. The timestamps were impossible. According to the notarization, my signatures had supposedly been witnessed nearly 2 hours away. At the exact same time, Linda was standing inside the county recorder's office. She couldn't have been in both places. The documents weren't just suspicious. They were provably fraudulent. Margaret smiled for the first time all day. "This is the smoking gun." I looked at the forged paperwork one last time before placing it carefully back into the evidence folder. They've spent months pretending they're above the law. And now? I closed the folder. Now they get to answer to it. Neither of us realized that by the following afternoon, Linda Prescott would make the most reckless decision of her life, ordering her board to break into my home and seize my safe. The courtroom was already full when Margaret and I walked through the doors of the county courthouse 3 months later. Word had spread far beyond Maple Ridge Estates. Local reporters filled the back rows with notebooks and cameras. Homeowners from neighboring communities sat shoulder to shoulder with attorneys, curious to see how a simple HOA dispute had evolved into one of the largest fraud cases the county had ever seen. Across the aisle, Linda Prescott no longer carried herself with the same confidence I'd seen at the clubhouse. Her cream-colored business suits had been replaced by a dark navy jacket that seemed almost deliberately modest. The rest of the HOA board sat behind her, whispering nervously. Their expensive attorneys shuffled through stacks of binders, avoiding eye contact with the prosecution table. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise." Judge Rebecca Holloway entered, surveyed the courtroom, and took her seat. "You may be seated." The judge looked toward the prosecution. "Counsel, you may proceed." The state's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this case concerns far more than an overreaching homeowners association. The evidence will show a coordinated scheme involving forged property records, unlawful attempts to seize private property, false reports to government agencies, trespassing, burglary, and conspiracy." The defense attorney immediately rose. "Objection. Counsel is arguing before evidence has been presented. Sustained, Judge Holloway replied calmly. Stick to the facts. Yes, Your Honor. One by one, the witnesses took the stand. The county recorder testified first, explaining the recording process for property documents. Margaret carefully guided him through each exhibit. Did your office receive a notice of HOA annexation concerning Mr. Carter's property? Yes. Who physically submitted that packet? He glanced at the certified courier log displayed on the courtroom monitors. According to our records, Ms. Linda Prescott. The room grew noticeably quieter. Next came the forensic document examiner. She projected enlarged images of my genuine signature, beside the signatures appearing on the annexation forms. Using digital overlays, she pointed to differences in letter formation, pen pressure, spacing, and writing rhythm. In your expert opinion, Margaret asked, did Mr. Carter sign these documents? No. How certain are you? To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, these signatures were simulated by another individual. The defense attempted to challenge her findings, but every answer reinforced the same conclusion. The signatures were fake. Then came the notary. He shifted uneasily as he took the oath. Margaret approached with a single document. Mr. Lawson, is this your notary seal? It appears to be. Did you witness Daniel Carter sign these documents? A long silence filled the courtroom. Judge Holloway leaned forward. You are under oath. The man's shoulders slumped. No. So your acknowledgement is false? Yes. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The defense attorney buried his face in his notes. The prosecution wasn't finished. Next, security footage from the county recorder's office appeared on the courtroom screens. There was Linda Prescott, clearly visible, walking into the building carrying the very packet containing the forged documents. The timestamp matched the certified entry log exactly. Margaret displayed another exhibit beside it. The notarization certificate claimed I had signed the paperwork nearly 2 hours away at precisely the same moment. Judge Holloway removed her glasses and studied both timestamps in silence. She slowly turned toward Linda. Ms. Prescott, her voice was calm. Would you care to explain this contradiction? The entire courtroom held its breath. Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence stretched for several seconds. Linda Prescott looked toward her attorney as though hoping someone else could answer for her. Instead, he quietly stood. Your Honor, my client would like a brief recess. Judge Rebecca Holloway didn't even glance down at her notes. Denied. The word landed like a hammer. She folded her hands and looked directly at Linda. You have been given every opportunity to explain the documentary evidence before this court. Do you have an explanation? Linda swallowed hard. I relied on advice from the board. The judge raised an eyebrow. So your testimony is that you personally delivered documents to the county recorder's office without knowing whether they were genuine? Linda hesitated. Yes. The judge turned toward the other board members. Did any member of this board authorize the creation of forged signatures? One after another, they shook their heads. No, Your Honor. I didn't know they were forged. I relied on the president. The blame shifted across the defense table like a wave. The same people who had once spoken with absolute confidence now refused to even look at one another. The state's attorney stood once more. Your Honor, the state moves to admit the final exhibit. The clerk handed copies to the court. It was the security footage from my home. Every angle had been synchronized with audio from my surveillance system. The screen showed the HOA trucks arriving, workers unloading tools, my front door being forced open, the frames splintering, Linda standing just a few feet away, calmly checking items off her clipboard. Then came the words that echoed through the silent courtroom. Move the safe first. We'll inventory everything else afterward. There was no ambiguity, no misunderstanding, no lawful court order, just a planned break-in. Judge Holloway watched the entire recording without interruption. When it ended, she removed her glasses and looked directly at Linda Prescott. I have served on this bench for 21 years. Her voice remained measured, but every word carried unmistakable weight. I have seen boundary disputes, fraudulent contracts, unlawful liens, and abusive litigation. She paused. I have never seen a homeowners association behave as though it possessed powers greater than those granted to the Constitution itself. The courtroom remained completely silent. The evidence establishes a deliberate pattern of fraud, forgery, trespass, unlawful entry, attempted theft, defamation, and abuse of civil process. She looked toward me. Mr. Carter repeatedly attempted to resolve this matter peacefully. Then she turned back to the defense. The defendants responded by escalating their misconduct at every opportunity. She lifted the written judgment.
Accordingly, this court declares every recorded HOA claim against Mr. Carter's property null and void.
A quiet gasp swept through the gallery. The court further enters judgment in favor of Mr. Carter for compensatory damages, punitive damages, attorney's fees, restoration costs, and all additional relief permitted by law. Linda lowered her head. The judge wasn't finished. I am also referring this entire matter to the district attorney and the state attorney general for review of potential criminal prosecution arising from the evidence presented during these proceedings. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Several reporters rushed toward the hallway, already calling their newsrooms. Outside the courthouse, television cameras lined the front steps. By that evening, every major local station carried the story. Headlines questioned how an HOA board had convinced itself it could forge deeds, spread false accusations, and force entry into a private residence. Within weeks, Maple Ridge Estates voted to remove every remaining board member connected to the scheme. Civil lawsuits from other homeowners quickly followed. Several residents discovered they, too, had been subjected to improper fines, fabricated violations, and questionable liens. The illusion of absolute authority that Linda Prescott had carefully built over the years collapsed almost overnight. As for me, I stood on my front porch several days later, watching contractors install a new front door where the old one had been destroyed. For the first time in months, the house felt quiet again, not because the fight had been easy, but because the truth had finally spoken louder than intimidation. Several months have passed since the courtroom doors closed behind us, and life has finally settled into something that feels normal again. The gouges in my hardwood floor have been repaired. The broken front door is gone, replaced with one that's even stronger than the original. Every time I lock it before bed, I'm reminded that a home isn't defined by the damage it suffers. It's defined by the determination of the people who refuse to surrender it. The safe is exactly where it has always belonged. Ironically, almost nothing inside it mattered as much as the principle behind protecting it. No homeowners association, no neighborhood board, and no self-appointed authority has the right to place itself above the law. Rules exist to serve communities, not to intimidate them. The moment people begin believing they can invent powers they were never given, accountability becomes more important than ever. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't let fear or anger dictate my decisions. Careful documentation, patience, and the willingness to follow the legal process made all the difference. Justice didn't arrive overnight, but when it finally did, it was built on facts instead of emotion. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, a property dispute, or someone abusing their authority, I'd genuinely like to hear your experience. Have you ever had a neighbor, board member, or organization try to claim rights they never legally had? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else realize they're not alone. If you enjoyed this story and want more suspenseful HOA, legal, and property rights dramas, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, remember, the strongest defense against abuse of power is knowing your rights and having the courage to stand by them. End.